Apple is right now down maybe 1.5% the last I checked. Is Apple one of those stocks? And I say this because the entire desk here owns shares of Apple. It staged a nice, quiet rally, didn't get as much fanfare over the course of the last several weeks, briefly overtook NVIDIA as the world's most valuable publicly traded company. What exactly is the thesis for Apple right now, and why why has it become a laggard to now a silent leader? Malcolm, I'll go to you for this one first.
We're still waiting for the super cycle. That's really all it is. We didn't get the dip that we expected. We didn't get the punishment in Apple shares that we expected over the last couple of years, where almost everyone has sat at this desk and asked, where is Apple in this AI arms race? They stayed out of it. Their CapEx looks minimal in comparison to what we're talking about with Alphabet, for example, today. And oh, by the way, there's still a ton of folks that haven't adopted the 16 and 17, which means that they still have the potential for the upgrade. So when you look at things like their recent announcement, the partnership with Klarna to help you lease their next devices, it's an opportunity to help spur that super cycle that we're talking about, that up cycle. I also think it's an opportunity to help increase their services revenue, which has been the spot that a lot of folks have pointed to as the real growth mechanism for Apple, because who doesn't already have at least one Apple device around the globe? So I think it's a patience story right now. And if you have been patient with Apple, waiting on them to show you how AI is going to change your life and the way that you interact with the device, I think you're probably going to be rewarded for it. But lastly, I'd say this goes back to the point that I was making before about investors waiting on these on these earnings calls for CEOs and CFOs to make the case in tangible terms, in layman's terms. This is how AI is going to change your life. We haven't really gotten that just yet from these companies. It's been very enterprise focused. And I think Apple is the perfectly positioned company to tell that story in a way that regular, ordinary consumers can appreciate.
I agree with Malcolm. Yeah. I think Apple's going to own consumer AI. I think you buy every dip. I think the stock could get to 400 if they continue to execute. Last quarter was a return to earnings and revenue growth after, 18 months of nothing. Yep. The 17 was a smash, comparable to previous big replacement cycle phones. And now the 18 is going to have AI on it. September 1st, we're going to hear from John Ternus for the first time as CEO leading one of these launches. I think it'll be the foldable. And you'll get agentic Siri by year end. And they have approval now to do AI on the phones in China. So I think like the tailwind behind Apple is as good as it's been in the last few years. I think the market has woken up to it, and they love the fact that we don't have this black hole of CapEx happening with Apple's balance sheet.
Negative free cash.
They do have a massive amount of CapEx, but you know who it's being funded by?
But there's an ROI.
All of us.
There's an ROI.
All of us, correct, because we're all out there buying, to Malcolm's point, if there is a super cycle coming up and iPhone upgrades and Mac upgrades and everything else. I remember talking to one tech investor who basically said, you know what, there are not that many companies, Dom, that have as many edge computing touch points as Apple does, right? The devices in our hands, in our homes. If you're trying to connect to the cloud, if you're trying to connect to many of these AI type systems, you're doing it through edge devices.
2.5 billion devices.